Great. Welcome, everyone. I'm going through some tech stuff over here. So anyways, if we are live here, welcome and all that kind of jazz. So today we are going to cover the competition game. And competition game is pretty big deal as far as if you want to succeed, if you want to be a better human being, if you want to get to the next level, be a better parent, all that. Competition is the biggest game in the planet to essentially figure out. Okay, so what is competition? So I'm going to break this down. So competition is essentially the better than and versus worse than game. So there's two sides of the spectrum. You've got the better than and you've got the worse than kind of spectrum with this. And so all the IER words, all the ER words, better, wealthier, smarter, uglier, prettier, all the kind of components like that, that is essentially the competition game. Now, the problem with the competition game is if you're stuck in it, it essentially destroys all your happiness, all your feelings of gratitude towards your successes, your ability to move forward in your life, and everything that you want to feel kind of amazing about in your life and feel like you're accomplishing and, being able to give yourself a pat on the back kind of thing. So competition is this dichotomy, the better than, worse than dichotomy. And what essentially it is, from my experience, I've done a lot of work with people stuck in the competition game, is they are stuck with an addiction to what I call invalidation. Now, invalidation is my language for negative energy. There's both clean and unclean negative energy. There's both clean and unclean positive energy as well. So basically, invalidation is unclean negative energy. So how do you get out of this? So what is negativity? What is competition in terms of how does it impact your sense of invalidation? So when we break this down, there's a few different areas, and I'm going to keep this to about 20 minutes for today. And so I'm just going to check something here. Cool. Thank you. I can't see who people are that are posting. So anyways, oh, cool. Courtney. Thanks, Courtney. And anyways, as we go forward here, so I'm going to break down the competition game, validation, and the opposite side of invalidation. And so that you can start to kind of navigate and think this out in your head and how does it impact your life? So the opposite side of invalidation are what I call strokes, unclean positive charged energy. So you probably know this one, you probably experienced it, not so charged about it, but someone who's fishing for a compliment, they'll often give out a compliment. Oh, what a beautiful dress you have, or what amazing talent you have. And essentially there's an agenda to it. There's a string attached. They want some sort of compliment towards them so they can get that kind of stroke. It's an ego stroke, if you will. And it couples with the invalidation side, because you cannot have the better than without the worse than. So if you have this feeling of feeling less than, your self-worth, all that kind of stuff, there's somewhere in yourself you're trying to seek out a better than kind of component for yourself, and you're stuck with this kind of addiction. And where this comes from is in an infinite number of ways. Childhood issues, it could be society's programming of how you should operate in the world. Universities do a good job of this, and schools teach you to be like this. Is if you get straight A's, you're smart, and if you get a D, you're a flunk, you're dumb, that kind of stuff. But really, the educational model out there, unless it's art or something like that, where you don't have to memorize stuff, education is really about how good your memory is, how much you're able to store memory imprints in your life. And we all know about memory and all the research out there. Basically, your short-term memory lasts about 6 seconds. It's not really all that long. So basically, education is formed in the invalidation strokes kind of dichotomy. And if you get D's, then you flunk, and then you can't get into success or whatever as an adult, right? Just because of that memory game. So more of this kind of stuff. So as we go forward today, I want you to really look at a lens of how this applies to your life and your situation. And if that's too personal for you, look at other people in your life that are stuck in the better than, worse than game, where you might think they're better than other people, or they're superior, or, that kind of stuff. And it doesn't mean that everybody's, all the same when you get out of this dichotomy, but it really means that there's some wounds, some issues, some stuff you're not dealing with in your heart and your head and your soul and your spirit, whatever you want to call it. There's a lot of components here that you really need to address on this competition game. So let's break this down so that you can have some tips go forward. I'm just keeping tabs on my time here and double checking I've got everything to here. And I'm just going to recap the better than, worse than game is basically an addiction. it is an addiction to an energetic phenomenon of invalidation. Now, most people don't want to admit that they have an addiction. Well, what do you mean I'm addicted to invalidation? And like, what does that actually even mean? So basically, you're addicted to negativity. So check in if you're complaining daily, if you're complaining about your kids, if you're complaining about your coworkers, if you're complaining. Complaints is a really excellent cue. If you're also seeking like agendas, if you have strings attached to things that you say, or you're seeking approval, or you're seeking acceptance from people, those are all addictions where you're not feeling sufficient within yourself. And so you seek this out and you create your life out of this, and then you're stuck in the competition game. So the hierarchy game, the climbing up the ladder game, the whatever. And it's not to say you can't do those things, but how do you do it without getting stuck in the competition game where it destroys your inner happiness, your inner sense of accomplishment, your inner sense of achievement about yourself and your progress in life? So let's break this down in terms of my process. All right, so my process follows 5 steps. And it's really easy to remember. And let me see. Cool. So it's a dream, DREAM. So really easy to remember. So I'm just going to do 4 of these really simply, and then we're going to break down the E, which is around where we get stuck in the competition game. So D is essentially discovery. And so discovery is like this aha moment. Something's off. You figured out something in your life, and you got to change something about it. You're feeling sick. You're feeling unhappy in a relationship. You're feeling like you need a career move or a career change or start a business or whatever it is. There's this kind of moment, this aha moment, this epiphany that you got to do something different. The R is the redesign phase where you're redesigning your life. You're like, okay, I've got this aha moment. How do I redesign my life to make this happen? I want to lose 50 pounds. And how do I redesign my life so that I do that? And that's an example, right? Now, the third piece is the elevation phase. So elevation is where everybody gets stuck. 80% of feel. This is 80. Sorry, I'm nervous today with my first live. So anyways, so elevation is where 80% of people fail in being able to succeed in their lives. And the reasons are here is this is where the negativity, the invalidation that we're talking about in competition really hits the fan. This is where everything comes to a point where are you going to do it or not? Are you going to take that step or not? And so the elevation phase, you deal with your inner critic, you deal with other people's backlash. Like right now, even myself, I'm dealing with an issue with my daughter's mom, and it's really contentious with her for whatever reason. And she's throwing a whole bunch of competition at me in terms of like trying to frame me in a certain way with a whole bunch of stuff. So how do I deal with this? I know myself enough that I'm a good father. I'm an excellent person. I have enough confidence in myself to be able to say that out loud, and I keep myself elevated. But when you have a lot of negativity coming at you, it can be pretty hard to kind of sustain and hold that for yourself. So the elevation phase is where you need to keep yourself lifted outside of, the difficulties of the competition game that's getting stirred up for you, the invalidation, the negativity, and all the components with that. And there are 3 areas where you need to do this. There's your energy, there's your emotions, and then there's also basically a lot of people talk about mindset, but I call it about being able to change your mind. There's nothing really as powerful as your ability to change your mind and keep it changed. A lot of things will try to influence you back, like the inner critic or the other people's backlash about what you do. So for example, you quit your 9-to-5 job that's got benefits, and then your family's like, well, why would you want to do that and start your own business? Like, what are you thinking? Like all the kind of stuff. And then you're like, oh, okay, I need to drop my energy and go back to like other people's consensus or whatever, that aspect. And this is the component where you need to keep yourself elevated and you need to be true to yourself. And so that's how you step out of the dichotomy around the competition game. The better than, worse than game is really to keep yourself elevated. Now, it's really simple to say that, but it's not exactly super easy to do that because of all the internal world stuff that you've got going on. Most people go back to a different type of addiction when they start to realize they need to make a change. It's like they're going to stop doing something, but they replace it with another type of addiction. Now, I'm not talking necessarily about drugs or alcohol addictions. I'm talking about other like internal thinking types of addictions, like complaining might be another form. So you might be escaping life so that you don't have to complain about people. But when you embrace life back again, then you start complaining about people again. So that's an example. But in this dichotomy of invalidation and strokes, you need to keep yourself elevated. And you can only do that by getting to know yourself. If you have no idea who you are, you can chase whatever success you want. You can be super rich. You can be super successful in relationships. You can be whatever's you've got going on in your life that you feel might be amazing per society's pictures about what you should do. However, it might not be true for you. And then at some point, you're going to hit a sabotage pattern. Some sort of crisis is going to show up in your life, and it's going to all collapse because it's not coming from your core, from your truth, and so forth like that. So that's really the dynamic of how you defeat the competition game, is really getting to know yourself. Now, once you get to know yourself and you're like, okay, these are my values or my principles or who I am, or however you want to language that for yourself, then you're going to start to deal with the external realities, whether it's your situation, whether it's the people in your life, your family members, colleagues, people at work, whatever it might be. Then you're going to start to deal with that energy. So this comes into my first point around energy management. So these are the 3 points around this. I'll just write these up here so that you can see it. It's kind of flashy today, but and emotions and change of mind. Okay, so being able to manage energy. Now, most of you, if not all of you, will be able to relate to the dynamic of you're hanging out with someone who's really toxic or really negative or whatever they've got going on. And then all of a sudden you start to either match that vibration, they're very negative, and then you start being very negative, or you even start to absorb their stuff on, and you go home after that conversation and you're still feeling that person's stuff in your space. So that's one example of energy management. It's how do you remove that stuff from your space? Sure, you can work all your stuff inside as much as you want, but when you start to deal with the external world, how do you deal with other people's energies? Other people in the competition game, they're stuck in the negativity game or the strings attached to things, the agendas. And if you aren't really clear on who you are, deeper down, there's another layer that the external kind of world provides a mirror for. If you're not really clear on the kind of deep down, you're going to lose space to that really, really, really quick. And so how do you deal with that? And that's what I specialize in, or one of the areas I specialize in, is how to remove that stuff from your space. Now, this is energy management stuff. So that's one of the things that you need to really understand, is how to manage energy. And I know it's a bit woohoo and way out there, but the best business leaders or the most successful business leaders that are connected to themselves, they will often talk about their gut feelings, their intuitive decisions are the biggest accomplishments or the biggest choice points in their lives that created the biggest success for them. So that's one of the key components you need to be aware of there. Now, the next piece is around emotions, emotional management. So in terms of the elevation phase. So emotional management, there's a dichotomy in here as well that people get stuck on, and it's part of this competition game, the self-worth and less than, worse than other people in that particular game. Now, if you're stuck in heavy emotions all the time, processing anger or reacting to anger or sadness or apathy or just kind of heavy emotions, depressions, all that kind of stuff, if you're stuck in that, I can pretty much guarantee that you're stuck in the competition game. And the competition game keeps you, it's intended to keep you pushed down. Our society celebrates pushing things down. There's a lot of different expressions in different cultures around there. In Australia has the tallest poppy gets cut down. Japan's got the nail that stands out gets struck down. There's all sorts of different aspects of our society that puts you back into your place. Even in our peer groups, when you stand out, everybody kind of notices you, and then they either criticize you depending on your group, or they support you. And if you have a group of people that criticizes you around you, they tend to push you back into your place and lower emotional tones because they can control it, they can manage it. It doesn't trigger them, it doesn't bring up stuff for them. And so you need to find a way to manage the heavy emotions so that you can start to weed yourself out of it and then move into lighter emotions like joy and playfulness. And speaking of which, I'm just going on and on about heavy stuff today. I'm going to pull out the dad joke. So I'm just going to, one of my dad joke fingers here. Yesterday, a clown held the door open for me. I thought it was a nice gesture. Okay, good. Dad jokes are the best. So anyways, so Lucina, I agree that we need to first get to know and deal with ourselves before we start standing up to manage others' energy and behavior. Awesome. I've not heard the term competition game before, but how you explain it makes a lot of sense. Awesome. Cool. Thanks, Lucina and Chad. So as far as the component is around energy or emotional management here, is the dichotomy of becoming and denial. And most people are familiar in our culture, particularly Western society, of denial of emotions. You got to stuff them down. You got to push them down. This is a bad emotion. Again, competition with your own emotions, and you push it down, you push it down, push it down. And at some point, there's so much in there that you can't contain it anymore. And then let's say it's anger, and then you flip, and then you go to becoming it, which is rage, this, that, and that, and just reactivity, right? And then you feel shame, you feel guilt, and you feel bad again, and then you go back to the other side of denial, and that's the process. And if you don't know yourself, you don't have a clear sense of yourself inside, you're going to stay stuck in that dichotomy. And as anybody who's in business understands that people make decisions on emotions. And if you're not in charge of your emotions, you make really bad decisions around your business, around your family, around relationships, and so forth like that. So you really need to get into that emotional management space. Now, the other piece here, in terms of the third piece in the elevation phase, is around a change of mind. So what exactly is that? So just a question for you with regards to a change of mind. Think of a time in your life where you changed your mind about something. You decided that, you were gung-ho about something, and then you pivoted and you're like, this is it. You change your mind. And what that did for you, the progress, the acceleration in your life, the, level of happiness it brought into your world to kind of change your mind. Now, this is how I define mindset, is your ability to change your mind. Everybody talks mindset game, and whether they've actually done it or not, it's another story, but they've read a lot of books on it. They've done this and done that, and they know the intellectual information of it, but they don't know the embodiment of it, is pretty much a lot of what mindset is out there. So essentially, to keep it really simple, what is mindset? Is your ability to change your mind. You feel unworthy, or you're unworthy, those kind of thoughts. Can you change your mind about that? Pretty simple, right? And but not necessarily easily done. But like, that's an aspect around changing your mind. Sorry, I'm on my tech issues here. Thanks, Lucina. Do I think this competition game in our society is done by design, or is that they're somehow naturally evolved? Oh, that's a good question. I will come back to that. Circle back to that around the theory of evolution. Okay, so with regards to the change of your mind, is like, how in the situation, if you are in debt, if you are unhappy in your career, if you are unhappy in your relationships, what can you do to change your mind? And you can intellectually do that like that. You can I can do that. You can read a book about it and intellectually grab it, and you change your mind. But that'll last a week, 2 weeks, maybe 3 months. If you go to like a motivation workshop that pumps you up, rah, 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 and gets you like, yeah, I'm going to do this. And then you become addicted to that rah, rah, rah energy to keep you sustained in that particular space. Like, I've had clients who spent like tens of thousands, $100,000 with like a lot of these rah, rah, rah workshops, and they're still missing stuff for themselves, right? And so you need to be able to change your mind, not just intellectually, but actually embody. And I'm not talking about physical, I'm talking about emotional. You have a physical, emotional, mental, spiritual components to you. And a lot of this rah, rah, rah stuff is really about the physicalizing of it. How do you emotionalize it and connect it into the emotional body, so to speak? So that's one of the components here. So I'm going to address Lucina's question around the competition game. So the theory of evolution is a theory. Okay, it's not proven. There are missing links within that particular evolution. But as a rule, it provides a structure for us as society to function, communicate, and talk about life in a way that we can understand at this moment. Some point down the future, some evidence will show up that will either change it or make it, more valid, whatever it is. But the kind of basis of it, in terms of the mainstream understanding of the theory of evolution, is that it's based on survival or competition or lack, or the survival of the fittest and all that kind of stuff. So deeply ingrained in our society is the theory of evolution, which is a competition game. Now, one of the theories I've recently learned about is the kind of the theory of like community and evolution in terms of like care. And in that kind of sense, that makes a lot of sense for me, because people evolved in tribal spaces, people evolved in communities to keep themselves safe and keep themselves, like, they learn, they share stories. There's a lot of community, and that was another theory around how we came to be to this day. Now, so there's a lot of different dynamics, and that's part of the dynamic of being able to change your mind. So that's a really deeply entrenched psychological pattern in our society. Even though it's like science-based theory, it's part of our psychology and our culture. So it's really something to translate of like, how can you change your mind? And I'm not talking about like flat earthers or this kind of like way out there that there's, whatever. I'm not here to argue those kind of points, but I'm talking about there's a theory in our minds as a society as a whole that really kind of anchors how we think and function in the world. Okay. And even in the English language, as we're talking right now in English, and most languages in the world are very hierarchical based, of like this on top of that, on top of that, on top of that. And rather than like a community kind of cohesion or like more of a peaceful. So just in our language itself, is really compromises our ability to kind of really be out of the competition game. So that's why I use a lot of different stories or analogies, because people can then frame it and understand that language instead of just necessarily English words in terms of different things that goes on. So I hope that answers your question. But there's a whole lot of stuff I could share about that kind of stuff. And we've got, where's our time? We're at 20 minutes now. So and I want to keep it to 20 minutes. So back to the elevation piece here, and I'm just going to check my notes here. Beyond this, my kind of research shows that only about 5% actually get past this into the mastery phase. And so the authenticity phase and mastery, and I'll break these down more down in other lives, but the mastery phase. And the mastery phase is you need to get into the mastery phase without competition. If you get into here competition, where most people are, they get here from a place of competition quite often, if they ever do, is because they're moving away from a problem. They don't want something, they don't want to feel something, they want this to change. They're moving away from a problem instead of towards pleasure. And that's basic psychology. 90% of people move away from pain instead of towards pleasure, and 10% of people move towards pleasure. You're welcome. And that kind of aspect. So at some point here in the authenticity phase is where this happens, is where you start moving away from pain and moving towards pleasure. And then you master that outside of the competition game, not because you're better, not because, like, I mean, I've spent personally like 60,000 hours turned inward inside of myself, maybe even 70,000 over the past 20 years. Am I better than someone for it? Heck no, I still mess up every day. Like, I've messed up a few times. I'm nervous today on a LinkedIn Live. What are you talking about? I know how to ground, all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of stuff I still need to work. I'm a whole lot more confident, a whole lot more evolved, if you will. I don't consider myself awake in that kind of spiritual community sense. I don't particularly like that term. I am conscious, living, breathing human being. Simple. And that kind of aspect. But like the mastery phase, how do you get here without the competition game of like putting yourself better than other people and putting yourself more accomplished than other people? It doesn't mean unacknowledge your achievements. That's another part of the competition game where you're unvalidating yourself. You need to be able to recognize yourself without it compromising other people. So common thing out there, common echo out there is being of service to others, partnering with people, helping other people. That's where you can apply your gifts into the world. There's no scarcity. There's no I'm better than you when you're serving other people, helping people climb out of the pit or climb up the ladder or whatever the dynamic is. And that's one component that you can go. And that's actually my sixth phase is around service and contribution. And but that's kind of my bonus, and I talk about it in other components. But like, yeah, realistically, the competition game keeps you stuck in a better than, worse than kind of dynamic. How do you step out of it? You need to be true to yourself. You need to connect to who you are. You need to do the inner work, the emotional work, the energy work, the being able to change your mind and see things from a different perspective. And then you can do it all on your own. Totally. I did a lot of it on my own. I got a lot of support through the years as well. But my recommendation would be to get support. My recommendation would be have support around you, accountability people, whatever. Who are the people that circle you, that support you stepping out of the competition game? And I think that's where I'll leave it for today. But if you are dialed in, or if you're like, I'm not sure about this or whatever, if you want to kind of get more clarity on the competition game and you're looking for like next steps and next chapter and stuff like that, I'll give you a bit of a plug on myself here. Obviously, it's my life, so I can do that. But I'll just click this in and you can go to yournextchapter.coach. At that place, it's a 20-minute scheduled consultation. You can book a call there, and we can discuss the competition game, how it's impacting you, where you want to go with your life, your next chapter, if you will. These calls are specifically designed for people who are going through a next chapter or create a new a new chapter in their lives and so forth like that. But beyond that, I think that's a good recap. I think that's useful for all of you who have watched this and who will watch this over the coming days here. And keep yourself elevated. Peace.